I'm Charles Collins, and this is my wife Carol on the camera. And today we're going to do your oral history. We want to start with where and when you were born and your full name. And spell your last name for me, please.
Well, I was born Earl William Mather in Garfield, Ohio, in April 1st, 1919.
All right.
April Fool's Day.
On April Fool's Day, and they celebrate my birthday every year
Yeah, they
all
do.
over the country.
And how do you spell your last name, Earl?
That's M-A-T-H-E-R. There's no S on the end of it. There's only one of me.
Mather.
Yeah.
Okay.
Earl, tell us, as you were born, were you born in a hospital, or what was the
No.
what was the procedure
According
at that
to what
time?
they told me, it was a midwife
Okay.
in Damascus. But evidently I was brought here soon after. I wasn't told really much about that. And if they did,
So-
I don't remember it.
Yeah. So you lived around this area most all of your
I
life,
lived
haven't
over there in
you?
that house, yeah.
Yeah. Now, Earl, tell us a little bit about what you remember before you went to school. You remember much at all before you went to school?
We had a zillion wrecks up here at the railroad, and I witnessed a lot of torn up people
Oh my!
and dead people and
That was before you went to
terrible
school yet.
crashes. Some of my relatives were killed up here too.
Didn't they have a crossing or anything?
They had a watchman from 6 in the morning till 6 at night. And most of the accidents happened at night.
So they didn't have blinking lights and stuff back then.
We didn't have electricity.
Yeah, just think about that.
Oh, didn't think about
1919.
that. Yes.
He was 10 years old when I was born.
They had my dad over here had a Delco plant. You know what a Delco plant is? And when they started to get electricity, there was one company come from the north across the tracks, and there was one coming down the east road. And before any of them got to Garfield, they had an agreement that whoever got there first would have the franchise to service all of Garfield, and then whatever equipment the other party had, they would buy that. Well, they got to my dad's house. Well, look at this, it's already wired. So they hooked up the electric, and they screwed a 110 watt bulb in his porch light,
Oops.
and they said, don't turn that off. There was no meter on it anyway. They said, don't turn that off. It burnt 24 hours a day. And that was the proof that they had furnished electric to a house in Garfield.
Who went and wired it?
My dad had it wired before that for the Delco plant.
Oh.
The Delco plant is a generator that generates electricity.
Oh,
It had
okay.
a motor in the basement, and the exhaust went out the
Right.
wall,
It was a
and you had to put
gasoline or
in
diesel
it.
engine that,
It run in the basement to
Run the
generate
generator.
electricity. It was 60 volts.
yeah.
So he had no idea that they were going to use his house
No.
for electricity.
Yeah, and then of course later on, much later probably, because I was probably 10 years old when he put a bathroom in that house. And
That was different back then.
that was the first bathroom in Garfield.
Yeah.
And
Isn't that something?
that was inside.
Did it flush?
Oh yeah. My Uncle Will Clemson was a carpenter. He was the old-time barn carpenter, and he built a lot of houses. And when he first heard about that, he said, that is absolutely ridiculous. He says, we used to eat in the house and do that outside.
Mm-hmm.
Now we come in the house to do that, and we want to eat outside. People are crazy.
Yeah, well, That was probably a good point, wasn't it?
He couldn't get along with that at all. And then, and he, of course, he drove the horse in the wagon to work every day. Left it stand all day long, you know, and then when it come night, he'd go home. And Dad, when he had been working for a while, he bought a Model T Ford truck. Was driving it to work, and he says, no working man ought to be able to own a vehicle. That's ridiculous. He still drove the horse every day, left it stand, and you know. So it took a while, but my dad finally talked him into leaving the horse at home and riding with him, because he was going the same place, working for him. So finally he left the horse. Well, that's the only use he had for the horse. He'd come out at noon and feed the horse, you know, in the bag, put the bag on his face.
Yeah.
He didn't believe in advancement then.
No, he wasn't much for that. He could build a barn. It would take about an acre of ground. He'd have that all laid out, and all the braces and all the holes. He'd walk through it and tell you whether it was okay or not. No blueprints. And then they'd get the neighbors all in there on maybe on a Saturday, and the women would cook the meal, and the men would set that barn up all one day.
That's what they call a barn raising, wasn't it?
And it was always right. Always right. And one day they had the barn up, and they was putting the silo. That's always was wood too. And he was cutting the rafters. He cut when he was 60, so he wouldn't go up on a ladder anymore. He done all the thinking and the cutting down below. And he sent the rafters up for that silo. And lo and behold, there was two that went on the side where the barn was that had the eave on it, but they shouldn't have had, because the barn was there. They had to be cut off. And boy, oh boy, now we got him. He's made a mistake. They sent him back down for him to be cut, and he says, that wasn't a mistake, that was an oversight. He still wouldn't admit that he made a mistake.
Well, Earl, where did you start grade school at?
Right here. This was a special district. We had a special tax rate. There was the lowest in the state of Ohio, because we had the streetcar paying taxes, we had the railroad paying taxes. And
So
it
you
was
had a
just-
streetcar.
Yeah, we had the streetcar, Stark Electric. And it amounted to the cheapest tax rate in the state of Ohio.
So where did the streetcar go?
Right down here at the corner, and went up and through Damascus,
Went through. How far away is Damascus?
1 mile.
So.
Well, it's 1 mile from Garfield Road.
Yeah.
It's about 1.25 miles from here. Yeah.
Well, Earl, tell us what kind of games did you play with the children as you started at school?
Played stick hockey.
Did you?
You take a evaporated milk can and stand in the middle of it and stomp on it, and the ends would come up and grip your sole.
Yep.
And you could run around with those tin cans on your feet. And we'd crumple up a tin can and put up any kind of a stick that had a little bump on the bottom of it, and play hockey with that tin can.
Now, did you have a one-room schoolhouse? Or
No, it was a 2-room. It had all 8 grades
uh-huh.
right down here. It still stands.
Was that one teacher or 2 teachers?
2 teachers,
Two
one
teachers.
downstairs and one upstairs. Yeah.
Big pot-bellied stove, heat it?
No, it
No?
had a furnace in the basement.
Really?
Boy, that was modern, wasn't it?
Yes.
It was a
Ours
nice
always
school.
had a
Yeah,
pot-bellied
furnace.
school,
It had a furnace that heated both stories. It was fairly warm in there.
They have running water or anything?
Mm.
No.
No, had a pump outside.
Outside toilets?
Outside toilets.
Yeah.
Well, Earl, you was in classes where the upper grades also were at that time. Is that right? Or and so you
All 8 grades.
you listened to what the older kids were reciting and so on.
Mhm.
So you you pretty well knew your lessons by the time they got to
Well,
giving them to you.
My mother was a school teacher, and we had the first primer was a little, what they called a little red handbook. I don't know whether you ever heard of it or not. The little red hand.
No, I haven't.
That was the primer. Winston
Okay.
it was, and of course I had that memorized. I didn't learn to read. I had the book memorized,
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
and that was against me. She
Yes.
had me in that book. I could memorize. I could just look at the picture and say every word that was in that page.
That kind of hampered you
But
from
I
learning.
couldn't spell. I couldn't read really.
Mm-hmm.
He wrote a word on the board, S-A-I-D. The little the little red hand said. He took that word out of that sentence and wrote it on this. I had no idea what that word was. I had no idea.
But you could repeat what it said in the book.
Yeah, but I could read the book, or make people think I was reading it anyway.
How long did it take you to learn how to read?
Well, I think probably in the first grade, I don't know.
It's
I never-
crazy what they're teaching
I
kids
never
now
did
in
learn
first
how to
grade.
spell, though, but my dad always spelled things the way they sounded,
Mm-hmm.
even when he was an adult.
Yeah.
He wrote words down that just like they sounded.
That's how people got names that are all different from one another nowadays.
Yeah.
Well, Earl, as you progressed on through grade school and went on to the upper grades, how high did you go in school?
I finished the 8th grade, and I had one extra credit because I took music.
Mm-hmm.
4 years of music will give you 1 credit, so I had 1 extra credit when I graduated.
Was that in instruments or singing or what?
Singing, mostly vocal,
Singing.
yeah. And I took music in grade school. I was a good soprano when I was in grade school, but when my voice changed, that was the end of that.
Right.
I lost it all
Yeah.
together.
Now, as you finished the 8th grade, did you have a graduation ceremony?
Oh yeah,
And what did they do?
I don't know.
You don't remember, huh? That
But I
sounds.
was in the
Finally found something you didn't remember.
I was in the junior play, and I was also in the senior play.
I think you just got a certificate. I think that's what I got. It was just a certificate saying I graduated
I think we had
from the 8th grade.
some kind of a ceremony.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then you went on to, where did you go to high school?
Right. The building is there right now, but it's been all together. I don't suppose any part of it's the same as it was. It's all been modernized.
So
But
you.
that's no more a high school now. That's only intermediate.
Mhm.
The high school has been moved over to Beloit.
So you went to high school here in Garfield also.
It's just
Yeah.
between here and Damascus.
Yeah. Okay.
It's less than a mile.
Okay. Did they have sports that you played in high school at that time?
They had a good basketball team, one of the best, but we didn't have a football team.
Okay. Did you play basketball?
That's a long story. They thought I should. Everybody, the fellow that lived in this building here, he thought I should. I was fairly tall, I guess.
Mhm.
He thought I should be a basketball player, and I didn't like the game, for one thing, because when I was going up to the basket, somebody's elbow was always coming back down. But he made me kind of coaxed me into going, so I went for a few days or a few weeks maybe, and they always played a scrimmage.
Mm-hmm.
When all the practice was over, he had a silver dollar he kept in his pocket, and they'd say, well, give us a few more minutes, and he'd take that silver dollar out, look at it, yep, 3 more minutes, put it back in his pocket. So they give me the ball, and I was in the middle of the floor, only as we were on the side, and I was afraid to dribble. I knew I'd mess it up if I tried to dribble, so somebody yelled, shoot. And it sounded like a good idea to me, so I stood there and I hit the basket. I thought I was going to hit the ceiling, but it didn't. It didn't even hit the backboard. It just dropped in the basket.
Wow.
Oh, they said, yeah, he's going to be a great basketball player. But that's about the end of it. I said, I just can't get with it. I done that. That's as good as I'm going to get. So why go any farther?
That's right. Well, Earl, did you get involved in any of the school plays or anything like that?
Yeah,
As
I was
a- as
in both of the plays, of junior and senior.
a-
both of
okay.
them.
So you enjoyed that.
Oh, I don't know about that. I was in them anyway.
Well, Earl, as you grew up, what happened as far as the girls were concerned?
Never had any.
Never had
I
any.
met
Huh?
her.
When did you meet your wife?
We went to a Sunday school picnic over here at Westville. And she went to a Sunday school picnic at Westville from down to Alexander, and that's where we met.
Aha.
And she had never been on a boat in her life, and I took her boat riding. And I guess we started.
A rowboat?
Mm-hmm.
And you, so you met her. Was you still in high school at that time?
I think I was.
No. We just, well, yeah, I guess you was.
I think I was.
Okay.
Now, did you graduate?
Mhm.
Okay.
Tell us about your graduation ceremony in high school.
I don't know much about it. I mean,
Okay. Did you wear a cap and gown and go to a formal ceremony?
I don't think so.
Okay. Well,
See,
sometimes
this
back
was-
then they didn't do that.
Well, we were trying to get past that depression. You remember
yes.
that part?
Oh yeah.
No, we didn't spend a lot of money that we didn't have to.
Okay. As you see now, what year did you graduate from high school?
37.
1937. And the depression was pretty heavy going on right at that time.
Oh yeah. Mhm.
What did your parents and your dad do during the depression?
He was a carpenter, pretty much self-employed. I think Uncle Will died before. I'm not sure what year, but he was self-employed,
Mm-hmm.
and work was hard to come by. And he worked. A lot of work was done for farmers, and you could say it was lucky for him. When this depression hit, he had a lot of people that owed him money. He was pretty soft-hearted, and he didn't press people for money. So he had a lot of money out that he couldn't collect because they didn't have money either.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, "What have you got?" You know, well, I got a sow here. It's about ready to have pigs. I'll take it. We kept it over there in the field, and the sow was crippled or something wrong. He couldn't stand up, but it did have pigs. But I don't know exactly, but he had a cow. Somebody gave him a cow for part of their payment. And he kept that cow out in the garage for years and years and years and never bred it, but he kept on milking it. It kept on producing milk, so, and it got old. He'd had it so long. And in the 60s, he had bought a new car, a Kaiser Fraser, and they took a trip to California. Probably the last decent trip they ever had together. And while they were in California, my brother-in-law and I butchered that cow. We had a Stuart Warner refrigerator. There wasn't a freezer really, but we put that whole cow in that refrigerator.
Oh my.
And had it all cut up, and when they come home, they didn't have a cow to milk.
They were a little unhappy.
We used to go down in the basement. One of the things he could get from the farmers was wheat.
Yes.
He'd bring home a bag of wheat. We had one of them coffee grinders that you ground your coffee in. We put that wheat in the coffee grinder and grind it up, and Mom would cook it for cereal. And the creamery was over here. I own that building right now. That was the creamery. Skim milk, if you took a bucket over, they'd just fill it for nothing
Really?
because it was worthless. They
Yeah.
they
To
couldn't
them,
sell
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So anytime you wanted skim milk, you just go over there and they'd dump it out, and whatever you took over there, they'd fill it. So we had that skim milk for our cereal, and we'd grind up that wheat, and that was our breakfast.
So you never
That was
really
your
went
breakfast,
hungry.
So there was other things people would have. One fella down in Homeworth had geese,
Okay.
and we went down one night after dark because that's the best time to get them. They roosted in the trees and on top of
Yeah.
the barn, and they got one of them great big things. The wing bread was probably like that. Put it in a gunny sack and said, "Here, hold that." I was maybe 10 years old. That goose was almost as big as I was, and I was supposed to hold him in that bag. He was trying to fly inside that sack. But we brought some of those home, and of course butchered them. We had chickens often, and the steps down cellar had slats on the front so that chickens wouldn't get out. We keep them down cellar underneath the steps.
Mm-hmm.
We feed them long enough,
Yeah.
and little by little we'd kill them off and eat them. Sometimes, I remember we had chickens out in the garage.
With the cow.
The cow was in the garage.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, he would take most anything that he thought we could use because he knew they didn't have any money. Nobody had money.
Farmers actually about the only ones that really had a lot of food.
Of course, my
and
dad,
stuff.
he never thought he would make a very good farmer. He said, farming is one business you could be a complete failure at and still not starve to death.
That's right. That's right. Hard work, though.
Yeah.
Very hard work.
Well, Earl, during the time that you graduated from high school in '37 and so on, there was a lot happening in the world that changed your life and everybody else's life at that time. Do you recall much about reading or hearing about what was happening in Europe in the late '30s?
Not so much, no.
Did your parents happen to
not
have
so
a
much.
radio or anything?
No, if there was much, I didn't pay attention to it.
Okay, well that's not unusual. After all, you were young and ambitious and doing something besides paying attention to what was happening a million miles away.
Yeah.
Did you get married right out of high school?
No, not right away. I was 17 when I graduated, and I think 19 when I got married.
Mm-hmm.
So where did you work when you graduated?
Most of the time, I was between my brother and my father. My father was a carpenter, and my brother was a mechanic, and he was the best mechanic I've ever known. I've got a son and a grandson now, are both certified mechanics. But I think Raymond could probably go stay with him. He could diagnose a car going up the street. He could tell you what was wrong with it.
Mm.
He didn't have to go anyways near it to tell you what was wrong with it.
Isn't that something?
And he was always right.
That's good.
You got to stop that camera for a minute. I got to go to the restroom. Well, Earl, we took a little break there, and as we were talking, you was telling us about your brother and your father being a good carpenter and a good mechanic, and then you said that you'd gotten married at 19. So tell us a little bit about what happened between 17 and 19 as far as the women was concerned.
She's the only one I ever went out with.
Is that right? Well, that was a good choice, wasn't it?
Yes.
I don't
Yes.
know what she.
Well, tell us about your marriage and your honeymoon, if you had one. And where did you?
We didn't have one then. We didn't take a honeymoon until her sister got married, and they went on a honeymoon to Niagara Falls and up
Okay.
to Canada. So we went with them.
So you
So that was our honeymoon.
and
we we have any kids then?
Sure, Jack.
We didn't take them with us, though.
Mom and Dad kept Jack.
All right. That was nice of them, wasn't it?
Huh?
I say that was nice of them, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, he was a cripple, and
Okay.
they took care of him.
When he was a year old, he won a health and beauty contest at the Alliance City Hospital. When he was 18 months old, he was diagnosed with a cancerous tumor on his spine, and he's been a paraplegic just about ever since.
Oh my.
It wasn't operable then, huh?
Well, they took the two outer half of the vertebrae off of his back, in about the middle of his back, and that's when they discovered this cancer. And that's what, 66 years ago or 67 years ago.
67.
What did they know about cancer back
Yeah,
then?
that's
They
true.
don't know all the
That's true.
answers yet.
Yep.
So that it was inoperable, you might as
Yeah.
well say.
So did you keep
But-
him at home?
They didn't
Huh?
Did you keep him at home?
Oh, yeah.
put those two pieces of bone back.
Okay.
They handed him to us on a pillow, and they gave us the pillow.
Oh my goodness.
And they thought in 6 weeks he's going to be gone.
But he fooled him.
And when we did take him back the first time, they accused us of bringing in another boy. It's not the one we looked at.
Really?
That was at Akron Children's Hospital. But he was a fighter, and he still is. You tell him something you can't do, and first thing you know, it'll be done.
So is
He's
he in a
60.
wheelchair?
Yes.
He's 60, what is he, 66 or 8?
He was about 15. He permanently was in a
No,
wheelchair.
but now
Oh, now.
he's 66 or so. 60.
He'll be 67 the 9th of October.
And he still comes down here at this building and does welding and does painting and
Really?
does body work, and
How can he do that paraplegic?
that's what the doctor wants to know.
He has
he
use of
drives.
his hands then.
He drives his own car. He loads his own wheelchair. He can't walk a step. He can't even stand up.
I'll be darned.
He
And that's
can't
something.
even
That's
sit
it.
on the straight chair
His-
without falling over.
His doctor in Cleveland, which he has to go and see once in a while, that's because of the insurance that he has, brought his whole crew out to the parking lot. He says, I want to see how you do that. He has a pickup truck. He goes to the pickup truck, he gets out of it, gets in the seat. He folds his chair up. He drags it in the back of him, back of the seat, slides over and shuts the door and drives away. When he gets out, it's the same rigmarole back again.
Isn't that something?
He goes everywhere all by himself.
I'll
That's
be
wonderful.
darned.
Earl, as you got married, where did you live?
We lived upstairs in that house for a while,
Across the street here.
yes.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, we had already built this place for my aunt in Pittsburgh.
Okay.
She was a widow,
So you remodeled this from a livery stable
yes,
Into
for my
a-
aunt.
into a house for your
She
aunt.
was in it maybe 6 months,
Yeah.
and it's just too dark. We didn't have street lights, of course. They did in Pittsburgh. She looked out the window, and there wouldn't be nothing but her own reflection to look at, you know. And she was all by herself. Says, I can't handle that.
No.
I can't handle that. No, it's absolutely dark, you know, nothing.
And there's not too many people, probably there wasn't too many people around at that time.
No, and so she took a liking to Millie. She would unload everything. People she wouldn't tell her best friend, she'd tell her.
Aha.
So she thought we ought to own this house. and we had no money. I mean, I was making maybe $2.50 an hour or something like that. And I was already buying,
How about $2.50 a day?
I was making
Yeah.
whatever, it was $25 a week or something like that.
Right.
And I was buying a car, $25 a month car.
Mm.
And she wanted us to buy that house. Well, you had to have a down payment.
Yep.
I'll give you the down payment. So she loaned us $700
It's a lot of money back then.
for the down payment. And we went in and got a loan, and it was 20, what was it,
$18 a month.
$18 a month we had to pay on that loan.
Which is a lot of money back then.
Oh,
Plus the $25 a month on my car,
So half your wages were gone.
and
Right
that
there.
was what we actually had to live on for a good many years. And when they put the road through, that was in the 40s, I got $800 for the frontage that they took.
Okay.
So you didn't have a road out here at that
It was a
time.
road, but it was straight, right straight across.
Okay.
So out of that $800, I paid my aunt the $700. So we got off of that. And we still owed the $18.50 or 18 something a month. And plus this 25 of the car was $25 a month.
Hard.
And
Well, Earl, as you grew and you got married, you had a couple of children, and you've talked about your son. How about your daughter? When was she born?
well, I had two boys
First.
during the time I was in the service.
Oh, okay.
And then
So you had a total of 6 children, is that
yes,
right?
all the rest of them came later.
Earl,
She can tell you their birthdays, I can't.
I know all about that story. I can't either. Tell me, where were you and your wife at the day that you heard about Pearl Harbor happening?
On that day, I don't really know.
Don't remember. It was a Sunday, and you obviously were. When did you join the service? Were you drafted?
43, April 43.
Okay, so you were at home during the time that.
Lived in
Pearl
this,
Harbor
lived
happened.
in this house.
Yep.
So was you drafted or was you
I was
did you
drafted.
enlist?
I was drafted.
Melly, do you remember the day that Pearl Harbor happened?
do I remember what?
The day that Pearl Harbor happened.
I remember when it happened, but I don't remember what I was doing or anything.
Okay. Well, let's go on then. Earl, you evidently lived here for a couple of years, and then you got this notice. And how did you get notified that you were drafted?
I guess it was a letter.
Letter.
A letter. Your friends and neighbors.
There you go.
Why do I remember that? I don't know.
Uncle Sam wants you.
Yeah. Earl, as you went down to the draft board, or where did you go as you were inducted and put into the service then?
I think I went to Cleveland first,
Okay.
and from there I went over to Indiana,
Mm-hmm.
and I met a neighbor who lived a mile away that had been in the 3 Cs. So he had a little bit of knowledge about what the Army's like and
Uh-huh.
so on and so forth. And the first night I was there, I was in the same barracks with him.
So what is the 3 C's?
It's a training camp for boys that are out of work, and
Oh, okay.
that's supposed to kind of get them started on something that they can do for the rest of their life.
It was a government program.
Yeah, it's another government program. And he told me one thing that I always have remembered. Why do I remember those dumb things? He says, when you take your shoes off at night and your socks, don't throw your socks down on the floor. Lay them crossways on your shoes so they'll dry during the night, because you'll be putting the same socks on every day for a week.
Oh.
And at least you'll have dry socks. Well, I went one better. I always put socks under my belt. When I wasn't when they weren't on, they were under my belt. So if they weren't dry, they were at least warm. But that was my own theory.
Well, as you was inducted, tell us about the induction and the first day that you went into the service. You evidently went to Cleveland.
And then from, I forget the name of that place in Indiana, where we were given the name of the outfit that we were in, and it was called Combat Engineers, and I had never heard of that.
Never
heard of the Combat Engineers.
Earl, did you have your uniform by then? Was you in your uniform by the time you learned?
I don't think so, no. We didn't get that till we were down Camp McCain.
Okay. And as you went to Camp McCain, how did they fit you with your uniform?
I guess they took my size and handed me some clothes. I don't know. They said, "This is it."
Did they fit?
Most of them did, yeah.
There you go.
A lot of guys, they didn't fit.
I don't know. They wore them anyway.
So then you went to a Camp McCain. Where was Camp McCain at?
It's in Mississippi.
In Mississippi. So you took your basic training at Camp McCain?
Yeah, all of it, except I got an emergency furlough from basic. That's something unusual.
Yeah.
Her grandfather died, and her parents sent a telegram to me.
To you, saying her
And
grandfather.
I was in radio school at the time, and I was off of the company area. The first sergeant drove his Jeep out, pulled me out of class, and read me. I never saw the telegram. He read me this telegram. It says Grandpa died and so on and so forth. Turned around, went back. I went back in class. 15 minutes later, here he come again with another telegram. My folks sent me a telegram. Said the same thing. Grandpa died. Nobody said it was her grandpa.
Yeah. Just said Grandpa.
He read that
Yes.
telegram to me. He says, "I suppose you on a furlough." What do you suppose I said?
Yeah. Yes.
I said, "Yeah." He said, "Get in the Jeep." I went in the Jeep, and he says, "Go get a shower, and I'll have your furlough ready when you get out." And I did just what he told me, and I went back to the orderly room, and I walked out the door, and there was a Jeep sitting outside with a driver in it. I says, "Where are you headed?" I said, "Are you headed to the main gate?" He says, "Yes." I says, "Can I have a ride?" He said, "Jump in." I rode to the main gate. Now I'm 10 miles from town. She's already down there with a bus ticket to come home.
Mm-hmm.
She's in a hotel. I'm 10 miles from town. I'm going to have to either walk or hitchhike. First car come by, saw me in the uniform, stopped, picked me up. So we got 10 miles to go, and I told him a story. And he says, "Well, I'm not headed for there, but I'm going to take you down to the hotel, which is across from the railroad track, from the station." Naturally, she's not home. She's out gadding with a neighbor someplace. But I knew where to get her because it was one of our neighbors that was down there.
Uh-huh.
So I went over there and I says, "Pack up, we're going." And I went across to get some tickets because I knew we didn't want to ride home on her bus.
Mm-hmm.
We wanted to get home quicker than that. So I got 2 railroad tickets. I had no money. I got tickets to Canton. That's all the money we had. And while she was packing up, I got the tickets, and I went back over and got her, and we come over. The train was moving when we got on it.
Oh my goodness.
It had a layover in Chicago from the Union Station to the Grand Central Station. We ran out the door, and there was a cab sitting out there, and we jumped in that, and when we got to the other station, she says, "Aren't you going to pay him?" I said, "It's on the ticket." That train was moving when we got on it. It only come to Canton because that's all the money I had. So we got the streetcar from Canton to Salem. We had that much money. It was only a quarter or so.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're in Alliance. So her grandparents lived in Alliance.
Oh.
So that's where we headed.
Yeah.
We got a ride home from there. I knew we would.
You know, kids today, they have no,
They don't have no conception.
no,
So
they don't,
she-
of money.
She told everybody while we were home, "I'm going back with him." Her word is law. So we had that terraplane, that was a Hudson terraplane with a lid on the back.
Mm-hmm.
I took some boards and I made a pickup truck out of that car. The spare tire goes underneath the shelf. So I had room enough for 2 spare tires. I tied a rope on the first one so I could always get it out. And then the rest of it we loaded up tricycles and ironing boards
Canned goods,
and canned
cold
meat,
packed
cold
meat,
packed
peaches.
Yeah.
And we took that thing back down. It had pretty near 100,000 miles on it by that time. My brother had a garage over in Damascus, and I took it over to him. I says, "Check it over." I told him where we were going, and he says, "It looks fine to me." He says, "You could drive that another 100,000.
So you went back down to Mississippi.
So he started it up to drive it out the garage, and the battery blew up. So at least I had a new battery in that old car. And we drove with both kids down to the Grenada. No place to live. She lived in the car with them 2 kids for about a week.
Oh, wow.
We finally got a room. Somebody had closed in the underside of the grandstand at the racetrack, made apartments out of that space. So that's where she lived.
My.
We had the only car in existence down there, the only civilian car. And anybody wanted to go to town, we could put 8 in that car. And if you had to, you could put 10 in it.
In the Hudson, yeah.
Yeah, in that old Hudson. You could put 3 we could put 4 in the front and 4 in the back to start with.
Oh my goodness.
And you could start sitting on people's laps, as many as you wanted to do that. And we had, usually a standard rule was about 10 people when we went to town, because that's, everybody wanted to go. And we had the only transportation.
Well, as you got back to camp, did you have to start your basic training over again, or what happened then?
No, I just lost that much.
Just lost that much training, huh?
I flunked out of the radio school because I missed the most important part of it.
Yeah.
And I couldn't finish it, so I didn't get any credit for that at all. And I wound up being a technical sergeant for my carpenter ability, I guess is what you might say, which I was good at anyway. I was a radio buff. I made radios, I built radios and this and that and the other, but I would have preferred the radio probably. It was a cushy job, but
So they put you in where he's building things.
yeah, and I liked that too. I was good at it. They finally realized that.
Well, Earl, as you finished your time there, where did you go after that?
We took our final training in the States down in Louisiana, Fort Polk.
Fort Polk?
Fort Polk.
Okay.
And
What was that training about?
well, since we were combat engineers, we had to have all of the engineer training plus the infantry training.
Yes.
We took all the light infantry training. So we had both jobs to do. And we were supposed to be able to protect ourselves wherever
Yep.
we were.
Yep.
And it was that way all the time overseas. We worked with a rifle on our back. Every place we went, we had that rifle on our back. And that's what we did. We worked in our rifle, with our rifle on. And as we went through our different jobs that we had a barrage balloon outfit that followed us. And every place we stopped to do a job, they would put up these balloons. Plus, we had an anti-aircraft outfit that followed us. And every place we stayed for any period of time, they would encircle us with anti-aircraft and shoot straight up.
Yeah.
So what was the balloons for? Weather balloons?
No. No.
Catch the airplanes. They had a wire that you couldn't see. It was so fine.
You mean when the airplanes came in,
Yeah.
it would catch them?
It would catch them.
Okay.
They had a, I don't know, they were up, you could see them, they weren't out of sight. And then they had an anchor in the ground, and this little cable was, you could, in the daytime, you couldn't see them. They were so small, but they were absolutely,
That's what the balloons
but
are for then.
they would tear the wing right off of an airplane. And they did. We brought down, in all the time we were there, we brought down 9 aircraft. Just with those balloons.
Just for those balloons.
Yeah.
Hopefully they weren't all yours.
Most of them were. Because they couldn't see them.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
A P-51 was our fastest airplane. And this one day, about noon, it was the middle of the day anyway, we could hear this thing. Oh, they make a lot of racket even when they're flying straight. This one was this way. And I think he must have been able to see those wires because he was going this way. And he went all the way through. Went all the way through.
Really?
And away he went. I'm sure he could see those wires because I don't know how else he would have got through it. But we were that far away from one that came down and too dumb to move, just spellbound, you might say. We didn't even have sense enough to run.
Did you
Come
get
down
hurt?
right in front of us. Yeah.
Did you get hurt on it?
There was 2 people in it and they both walked out of it. It took the wing right off of one side, just took it off.
That was your own planes?
That was, it was coming across the Rhine River, and what I heard was a noise of it.
Uh-huh.
He was playing, I thought. He would gas it and then he'd let off. He'd gas it and let off. Well, what he was doing, he was towing this balloon. It had ripped the anchor out of the ground,
Oh,
so he
my.
had the anchor on one end of the cable and the balloon on the other, which was spinning him around. Well, the only way he could keep it out of the water was feed it some throttle. Well, he didn't want to do that. He wanted to land. So he was going in between. He was giving it enough throttle to maintain control, but he let it off because he wanted to get down. So when he come across the river, that was his main object, was to get on the ground. And that's what he did. And just about the time he lit, the rest of the wing let off. And he ran down there till he hit a tree and stopped, and 2 Canadians got out of it, and they was looking at the map and was wondering why that wasn't on the map.
Well, Earl, tell us about your trip across the ocean. Did you go by ship or?
Yeah, we went on the biggest convoy that they had ever assembled,
Really?
and there was 300 ships,
Wow.
and we were in one of the biggest ones. Of course, the convoy has to move at the speed of the slowest ship.
Yes.
And we had, for our particular boat, we had LSTs circling day and night. They just make circles around us. And we did find, or somebody said that we've sensed a submarine or something because they threw out the ash cans, you know. but we never found out whether they hit anything or not. Nothing ever came up.
Did they convert a lot of these luxury ships?
This was a luxury ship. It was a sister to the Queen Mary.
Okay.
The Queen Mary was the biggest ship in the world at that
Mhm.
time, and this one was within about 6 feet of the same length. And it was also owned by the same company, the Dominion Monarch. They were sister ships. And
Did you
it
ever
was
get seasick?
continuous? Was about 10. I never vomited though. I never vomited.
How was the weather going over
We
there?
had some bad weather going over, and we had some bad weather coming back both times. Yeah.
Where did you land, Earl, as you was going over?
We landed in southern England.
Tiverton, wasn't it?
Well, we didn't land in Tiverton, no. I'm not sure what the port was,
Okay.
but then we took we walked a long way. We walked a long ways.
Well, Earl, let's put this now in a time frame. Do you remember what day and month it was that you got to England? Or roughly?
That I got what?
So that you arrived in England
It was in December. We left New York in November.
and you got into England.
So it was, I remember having Christmas in England.
Okay. And that was what year, 1943? Or 40, what year was it?
43.
43 or 44?
44. 44. Because it was over with in 45.
Yes. So,
Yeah. We spent 4 months in England. And I was picked out of the whole group to be an MP
okay.
because we were so far away from an MP unit that they didn't have anyone that could make the
Yeah.
trip, I suppose you say. So I was billeted downtown in Tiverton along with 2 people from each outfit in that area. So we were MPs, so I didn't get a whole lot of training in England. Most of them got the rest of their infantry training. It's what we were short on.
Okay. Now, was that after D-Day or before D-Day?
Well, I'm not sure when D-Day was.
It was June 6, 1944.
Well, see, I was still in States then.
Yeah, okay. So you went over there
So,
after D-Day.
yeah.
And when did
I
you...
was in England during the Battle of the Bulge.
Okay, we were still in England
Yeah,
during the
because
Battle of the Bulge.
they were considering us,
Mm-hmm.
but we were not infantry. We were engineers.
Yes.
So in England, all of the ones that, except me, took the infantry training,
Mm-hmm.
so we could go over and help out at the Battle of the Bulge. And I suppose I was one of them, but a certain percentage of the outfit has to have the training.
Yes.
And since I was an MP and there was one other fellow that was, for different reasons we didn't qualify because we hadn't finished our training. Not all of us had.
Yes.
So there was another outfit that had the criteria, so they went in place of us to the Battle of the Bulge. Some of my Legion members, at least one of them, was in the Battle of the Bulge. Told me about it. But we got over into France. That's where we landed in France.
Yes.
In February of 44. Cold.
Yes, it was cold, wasn't it?
Yeah. It's cold. We slept in the mud. And we moved out of there. We moved fast. And we had a red ball painted on our bumper. And there was what they called a red ball highway, which was one way straight through, no stops. Every intersection had to wait on you. So we traveled maybe 300 miles a day.
Really?
Wow.
And with a convoy, that's pretty good, you know.
That's moving right along.
And every day we would send back a ration truck, and he'd find the depot, and then he'd chase us. And
Did he ever catch up?
He never caught up. So every day we'd send another truck back for rations,
Oh my.
and maybe after 2 or 3 days, then they'd move the depot to keep up. So then not only that, he had to hunt the depot.
So you guys getting a
So
little hungry.
We were getting at least a week behind in our groceries,
Oh my goodness.
and we were down to the emergency rations altogether. And our medical officer realized that we were in bad shape because you get a little bit of a cut on your finger and it wouldn't heal, it would fester.
Mm.
So he stood at the chow line, and he'd have a vitamin pill, and he'd put it in your mouth and make sure you took it. He's no hiding it. You had to take it. So we lived on the vitamin pills plus our emergency rations for about a week, and we ran out of water also. And we got into a town, I think it was called Gelderen. It was blowed up like all the rest of them. Hardly any buildings still intact. And they had blowed up the brewery, among other things, and the bank. I have some money out of that bank. It was laying all over the streets. And I told the guys, there's probably something in there that still has beer in it. They wouldn't probably hit all of them.
Mm-hmm.
We had waders, boots that fastened around your waist. So a couple of the fellows got in there and waded around in that beer, and they found one of those casks, they call them,
Mm-hmm.
that hadn't been blowed up. So they come back and got every gas can we had and every water can we had,
Full of beer, huh?
filled it full of that black beer. And I shaved in beer. I can tell you that, because we didn't have water.
Yeah, didn't have water, so you shaved in
I
the beer.
shaved in beer.
Did you drink it afterwards?
And it was black
Yeah.
beer.
Very
I
strong.
think it's supposed to age.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, they didn't wait for that. I'm not a beer drinker. Might have drank some of it, but I didn't drink enough of it to amount to anything. But I shaved in beer. But I do remember that my buddy and I were in a, well, you might as well say a hotel, because we had confiscated this building. And we were sitting there at a table, whether we were playing cards or what, probably playing cards. And somebody walked in with a jug about that big around, and it had wicker all the way around the bottom. It was round, so you couldn't set it down. It had to hang up. And it was clear liquid. And my buddy, I know, thought it was water. I know he did. And he handed his canteen cup over, and they filled it about half full of that stuff. And he took a swallow of it just as if he was drinking water, and it was some kind of vodka or something. Pure alcohol.
Yeah.
And I had to work on him. I thought he was going to die right there. He couldn't get his breath.
Moonshine.
And when he did get around to where he could talk, he says, I thought that was water. Because he hadn't had a drink of water.
Wow.
And
You make it?
and it was, well, they took a little bit of it and poured it out in a spoon and lit a match to it, and it burned just
Really?
bright. You could hardly see the flame, but
He
it,
took a big slug of that just like with water.
and he just thought it was water and drank it. But that was how far we traveled. We just way ahead of our groceries.
So you were heading right for Berlin at that time.
They were, well, we were heading, we built, I'll show you the map we've got. We built about 5 bridges. and they were all the same. You wouldn't know one from the other. They were all piling.
Gotta change it.
Yeah, we got 2 minutes.
Okay, well, why don't you go ahead and change it now? Well, Earl, as we changed tapes here, we were talking about you being in France, heading up the Red Ball Highway. And how far did you go on that highway before you stopped and began to build bridges?
It's been 66 years ago. I don't know for sure whether I can remember. But we built, I think, about 5 bridges. And some of them, we had one over what they called a Weser River. And then there was a place where they wide out, and we went across 2 of them within a very short space.
Mm-hmm.
There was 2 that made the road straighter, actually. That's what it did. Some places, especially on the Rhine, they replaced bridges that were blowed out. But I think this one was over a canal. It might not have ever had a bridge there before. It might be that we decided that that's where
So-
we needed a bridge.
You need a bridge to get across to go.
But most of them, we were just alongside of a bridge that had been blowed out.
Okay.
Most of them were the steel.
Yeah.
You can't call them an arch bridge. They were flat on the bottom and arched on top, whatever that kind of a bridge was. Most of them were that kind.
Is that the kind you built or the kind you built
No,
beside?
we built wood piling bridges,
Okay.
and drove piling in, and it was an exciting little job. Those piling, they drove until they quit moving, and then they'd hit them maybe 3 or 4 more times after they quit moving, make sure they were down as far as they'd go. And they tried to make a row of 4.
Okay.
All right, our job was to go in there and lasso 4 of them and tie a beam up 1 by or 2 by like 10 or 12. Tie them all together with a 15-mile-an-hour current whipping them. Then we would drill with a drill through them and drive a iron bar through them. We get 4 of them lined up. Now we got something to stand on.
Mm-hmm.
Now you reach up and make a line that's level with wherever you want the top to be. And with a chainsaw, you cut the top of that off, whether you're standing below it. And that part goes in the river.
Part that they sawed off.
Yeah, and that could be 6 foot long, 8 foot long, whatever's up there. So when it's like a twig when a bird jumps off, you know how
Shakes.
but all you do is hang on. And when you get them all sawed off, then you put more plank, and you go up there and put a plank on that. And you work your way across the river, and that's all you do for a while. And you let them go down the river. Well, what they was doing, they float down the river till they come to one of these blowed up bridges, and they'd build a dam. Well, that's not any good, so they sent a crew down to lasso them and drag them in off of the river. And
Break
But-
the dam.
it just would pile up against an old bridge that was blowed down and laying in the river.
Well, Earl, as your group was building a bridge, were you ever attacked by the enemy?
Well, that's what we had this anti-aircraft for, day and night, plus the balloons. They were always up.
Even during
on
right
every-
where you were building
On
the
every
bridge,
job, they
they
followed us
put the
around.
balloons
Yeah.
up and
Yeah, another outfit did that. We never knew who they were, but they were there.
Mhm.
And the same way with the anti-aircraft. They were there. That was
So-
all figured out ahead of time.
and you come up every once in a while with airplanes flying at you.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
was there any other attacks from ground troops?
No. What they did, and that's different than the war we're in today.
Yes.
They would send up planes with leaflets. And the leaflet would be in Germany, of course.
Mm-hmm.
It said, this territory is scheduled to be under siege. If you don't want a part of it, get out.
Oh, they would warn you.
And that was every time.
They would warn the Germans.
Oh, okay.
And we weren't fighting the German people. We were fighting Hitler and his army.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And the people realized that. The people weren't afraid of us. And so once they dropped these leaflets, then they had mortars and they had the bombs. Well, the mortar, it shoots up in the air and lobs a shell. The amount, the distance that it travels is regulated by a bag of powder that they put in behind.
Yes.
So, and they also have an absorber. You shoot one up. No, they did, I didn't. And the absorber notes where it lands. And he says, whatever he says, if it suits him all right, he'll just say move it so many degrees and the same charge, and they go right across, and every crater overlaps the last one. So you get as far across as your range will go. Now he says elevate so many degrees. That means raise the rifle and also put another charge in, whatever he tells you to do. And you make another row. It not only overlaps the last row, but they overlap each other. So what you got left is blowed up ground, is about all that's there.
Mm-hmm.
Not only that, you got 24 hours of bombing. Every large building is a target. And like I showed you, there aren't any buildings there that are complete. They're either on fire or they're demolished, whatever. And that's what we drove through. The place that maybe you're in a city, maybe half the buildings are still on fire. They're still burning. But nobody's worrying about that. They don't even have a fire department as far as I know.
Just let it burn.
But just let it go, yeah. But our main problem was to get through that town, and we would widen out. If we couldn't find a street, we'd make one. I mean, we'd go and tear out a building that's already blowed up and bring back the bricks and fill in a place where we thought it needed it.
So you also had bulldozers and things too.
We had bulldozers, yeah, and jackhammers and chainsaws. We had chainsaws with handles on both ends.
Big ones.
Big ones, yeah. And so that's the way we traveled. If there wasn't a road there, we'd make one. And if it was a sinkhole, we'd fill it up with bricks out of a bombed out building or whatever.
Had lots of material, didn't you?
Yeah, and that big long beam, 85 feet is a long beam.
Yes, it is.
And it was, and I've got a picture of us eating lunch off of it. We were standing up, eating lunch. It's a pretty good sized beam, and it's always a mystery to me. Where in the world was there a factory big enough to make that? When was it ordered?
Yeah.
And how was it delivered? And it was there a week before we needed it. And actually we helped, it was on the front end was on the half of a semi, just the fifth wheel. The back end was on another set of wheels. And of course you got to have a straight road. You're not going to take it around a curve.
That's why you made straight roads.
So we made roads so that thing could get up there. We didn't know we was going to use it. They never told us nothing. Half the time we didn't even know what country we were in. In fact, we went through one town, and my buddy kicked over a sign laying there, and it said Charleroi. Oh, I know where I'm at. I'm in Belgium. Because he was in Charleroi. He lived in Charleroi, Pennsylvania, and he also knew that Charleroi, Belgium, that Charleroi, Pennsylvania was named after a town in Belgium. I didn't know that.
Huh.
Didn't either.
But,
Yeah.
well, he says, I know what country I'm in now. And that particular time, we were in Belgium. But we just went. They didn't tell us where we were going. We followed the truck ahead of us.
And you constantly built roads and bridges,
Yeah.
cleared the roads and built the
Yeah,
bridges.
and whatever was in our way, we took it out of our way.
Earl, do you remember roughly how many bridges you guys built?
I think 5 altogether.
5
Yeah.
altogether. They were good size. When you would spend quite a few days and maybe even weeks building
Took
it.
about 9 or 10 days.
Yeah.
The last one was up next to where that Remagen Bridge that they got across, you know,
Yeah.
for a while before it collapsed. And we were there ahead of everybody. And there hadn't been enough army up there to go across. They wanted to go en masse, so they would be convincing if they did go across. And so we stayed there for about a week. And the last night before the Ninth Army crossed the Rhine, I was on guard, and we took our own, we made our own rules, you might say, because we were kind of mavericks. Instead of going on guard 2 hours on and 4 hours off, we decided we're going to go 4 hours on and 8 hours off, and that's what's our own idea, and that's the way we did it. So I was on that night. I went on at 1 o'clock, and I was on till 4. And there somehow or another, a German, it happened to be an 88, I found out later, got across the river and got over to our side. He must have got it just about the time before the anti-aircraft got set up, because he was on our side of the river and he wanted to get back. Well, you could hear him. You never saw him. You could hear him coming. And as soon as you heard him, you heard our anti-aircraft, and it was a circle around us, and they'd shoot straight up. They never aimed at anything. They just shoot straight up. And I heard in stories about World War I where the anti-aircraft was so heavy you could get out and walk on it. I don't know whether you ever heard that expression.
Yeah, I have.
And that's how heavy it was. Them bullets, see, every fifth one is a tracer, so you can see where they're going. They only go up so high, and then they fall
Yep,
back
and they
down,
fall
and
back
they all
down.
go up the same distance. So there they are up there. It's like a floor, that thick. And so that meant he'd turn around and go back. He'd go out of sight. He'd go out of hearing. I mean, not out of sight, because you never did see him. And I was on guard for 4 hours, and that was going on all the time. I was on guard all the time. And when I got off of guard, and I was already tired, I was always tired. I didn't want to do nothing but get in that cot and go to sleep. And we were in a, I don't know whether it was a hotel or what it was, but the roof was gone on it. It was them slate that they always
Yeah.
tile. And the first bomb don't have to hit them. All it has to do is bounce them up and they'll slide off because they weren't wired on. So you could go up in the attic and look up at the sky. Well, I was down on one of the floors, and I was in the sack, and that plane come. I could hear it coming, and it hit the building that I was in.
Oh,
But it was another probably half a mile before it ever hit the ground. Some of the guys, and one of them was Joe Nesbitt over here in Boyd, went over to see it. I didn't care. I was tired.
you mean the plane actually hit the building?
Yeah, it finally came down. More out of gas than anything else, I think. So a bunch of them went over, and he got the Luger off of this pilot. There was only one fella in that plane. Joe said it looked like he was about 16 years old.
Oh,
Wow.
And he was in that all by himself. And now Junkers 88 is a big plane, but he was the only one in it.
Did he die?
Oh yeah, yeah. And that's the rest of that story. But that particular spot is where we built the last bridge that we built.
Okay.
And when they went over, that was that same night. They started after dark. Maybe it was next night. It must had to be the next night. The sky was full of airplanes all night long. Millions of airplanes.
Yeah.
The next day, they were coming back. Now, they spent all day, all night, or what the rest of the night.
Mm-hmm.
They were coming back, and these planes were flying low. They were in friendly territory. Fellows were sitting on the floor with their legs hanging out the holes that was in the plane, waving at us, because we went up into the top of this building where you could see out through. They knew if they had to, they could land, and they wouldn't be shot at. But if they possibly could, they wanted to get back where they come from.
Sure.
And that's the way that was all day long. I would say thousands, but I think to give it credit, there must have been millions of airplanes. And at the same time, you got to consider that there was always fuel. Where in the world did they get all that fuel, and how did they get it over there?
Mm-hmm.
But there was always fuel.
To fly the airplanes.
What I should have remembered to tell you was, when we were out of water, we washed our clothes in gasoline.
Ooh.
We could always get gasoline. There was never an outfit.
Never a shortage of gasoline.
There never was they said there was never any kind of a endeavor that had to be canceled or delayed because of the lack of fuel. They always had enough fuel.
Now, didn't that burn your skin?
I didn't wash in it. I just washed my clothes
I
in
know, but that would still be on the clothes.
it. Hang them up to dry.
Huh. I never heard of that.
Sure. It's
And you've seen it in a lot of these books, and it went everywhere. If you wanted a light at night, you take a rag and stick it down in a pop bottle of gasoline and light a match to it. Now, why don't it blow up? It never did. Put them inside your tent and read by a gasoline.
Oh, really?
flame. A rag burning with
And it never
gasoline
blew.
as the source. Because we always had gasoline. We always had it.
Mm.
Well, Earl, as you went across and built this bridge across the Rhine River, what time in the thing of the war was it that was it close to when Germany surrendered? Was it close to the end of the war?
It was getting to that point, because from the Rhine we headed up to the Elbe. That was going to be our next bridge. And somewhere along that line, they said, hold it up, we're going to give this area to the Russians.
Yeah.
They had that already figured out. So we stopped, and I think it was Erfurt, or maybe Erfurt or someplace like that. Flotow was the name of the town. Flotow. It was a kind of a mountainous area.
You stopped there,
But
and
we stopped there, and then during that period of time, the war was ended in Europe, and so we never went any farther than that. And it was over with.
okay. Now, as the war ended, what happened to you next? Where did you go, and what did you do?
Well, I didn't have enough points to come home, even though I had a wife and 2 kids.
Yeah.
That wasn't enough points. So I was transferred to a what they called a treadway bridge outfit, and they built what they called a treadway bridge, and they had enormous big trucks, Brockway truck, and they were 6x6, and each one of them trucks had one section of this bridge, and the job was on that truck, which had its own crane, was to back onto this bridge, unload that one section of bridge, and then get out of the way because your job's over with. The next
Okay.
truck brings the next section, does the same thing you did. And that's the way they built those treadway bridges. So I was transferred into that outfit, and I think I was in that until I was due to come home.
Do to come home. Well, you had some pretty interesting experiences while you was in that group of going to seeing.
We were in Marseille, and some of the outfit was dismantled in Nice,
Mm-hmm.
which is 100 miles along the Mediterranean. So they called us all out one morning, and they said all truck drivers report, because we got a bunch of trucks over in
Yeah.
Nice that has to be brought back to Marseille. Well, so there goes all the truck drivers, and they, in a day or two, they came back. Or maybe they didn't, I forget now which, but then the next morning, the same thing. Any truck drivers that didn't volunteer the first time, we're asking you now. Well, the third day, it wasn't volunteer anymore. You're ordered. If you can get one of them trucks in gear, you're ordered to go to Nice. So I volunteered. I knew how to drive a truck. I drove every truck that ever come in the door for my brother. He was a truck mechanic. I didn't want to tell him that. So I held up my hand, so I went with a group, and we went to Nice, stayed overnight, and well, there was not enough fuel to put all them trucks together, and the sergeant that was in charge of all this, he had a girlfriend back there, so he spent the night with her. He was nowhere to be found. We didn't even know where he was. So we couldn't leave without gasoline. So whoever was in charge of our group says, well, if you've got enough gas in your truck to go 100 miles, just take off and go home. Well, I was one of the lucky ones. I had fuel enough in the truck I was driving, so I took off on my own and came back to Marseille in that truck. And they give us a can of beans. That was our meal. So I took it and put it on the manifold of the truck. So when it come lunchtime, I had hot beans to eat. Carried our own can opener.
Yeah.
We always had a can opener. So I got home on my own, and when we got back to that sea of mud that you parked in, you had to use all 6 wheels as drive wheels.
Really?
Well, I was ahead of everybody else. I knew how to get one of them in gear, because I'd driven trucks before. I had no problem getting around to the parking lot and parking it where the guy told me to, but you had mud that deep to get. After you got out of the truck, you had to wade in mud to get out of that mess, and so I got that truck back without any problems. And then we stayed in France, southern France, for quite a while before we got a boat that had our name on it. Spent quite a bit of time.
Okay, now you spent some time traveling into the concentration camps. Tell us a little bit about that, how you got there.
Well, I wanted to kind of do that out in the kitchen.
Well, let's start out in here and just roughly
like I
describe.
told you, we were stationed in Essen, and that's the steel city.
Yeah.
And this camp was, I think, within sight. It was on a knoll. People around there said they didn't know it was there. They thought it was some kind of a officer's quarters of some kind, but they couldn't explain all those truckloads of prisoners going up there every day. They just didn't want to know about it.
Sure.
They just didn't want to know about it. And I told you about this fellow's experience of how they took care of the survivors.
Yes.
And of course he talked to my buddies all the time. We went around to all of these different rooms. That room that I showed you, the furnace, where the furnaces were,
Yes.
was a concrete building, but it had hooks embedded in the wall where they would tie people together with their hands and then hang them on them hooks.
Yeah.
The walls were bloody.
Wow.
They never got off of them hooks, but that didn't keep them from trying. And they were, of course, barefooted. They'd try to climb up enough to get off of that hooks, but they never could. But they would leave them up there till they died.
Oh, really?
And then
Yeah.
they'd go in the furnace too, along with everything else.
Was that men, women, and children, or just men?
I didn't see any children,
Just men and women.
and I didn't see very many women. I don't remember seeing any women. They were all men as far as I could tell.
Well, they were all the
Prisoners of war?
They were all Jews.
they were all Jews and they were all
Didn't matter what
prisoners of war. Yeah.
nationality. The one I talked
Yep.
to was a Hungarian Jew.
Mm.
His main aim was to eliminate the Jews.
Mhm.
Eliminate them.
Yeah.
And of course the women can't produce without the men, so I guess
Yeah.
he's trying to take care of all the men.
Well, Earl, as you
I'm-
continued on, we'll go out in the kitchen and talk about that
I
a
wanted to
little
show
bit
you
later. Yes.
a big
but,
quotation that's in large print of one of the, I guess he was a general.
Yeah. We want
His
to.
first trip in at Buchenwald and what he wrote. That's
How many
history.
minutes
You
we
ought to
got?
have that.
26 minutes.
Okay. I wanted to go on and finish up this part of the interview, and then we'll go
Okay.
do that. Individually on another tape, so that we can put it right on the end of the program.
Okay.
So, Earl, when did you discover it was time to come home?
Well, when I was told.
Yeah, all right. When did they tell you it was time to come home?
It was in December of '45, and I can't tell you what date.
Okay, well that's
But I
close
can tell
enough.
you the date that I saw the Statue of Liberty in New York.
What day was that?
That was New Year's Day of '46.
Isn't that something?
Oh my.
I bet you was happy to see that.
And my throat fills up when I remind me of
Yeah.
that. I didn't think I'd ever do. I think I just give up ever being able to come home. There's too many things happened too fast. It's not possible for me to make it through all this.
Yeah.
Do you, over there, when you're over there and stuff, do you think of surviving or just living from day to day?
Just living to day. Surviving is out of the question. You think you'll never survive, but you want to live as long as you can.
If you wake up the next morning, you're okay
You're okay,
for
right?
that day.
The airplanes, we knew by the sound what it was. We could always tell a German airplane. And of course, we were never, as long as the war was on, we were never out of sound of the bombs. 24 hours a day, you could hear bombs.
Isn't that something?
And you got to sleep sometime, so you're going to sleep with that bomb
There
going
was a
off.
bomb going off.
But they said, don't worry about that. The one that hits you, you'll never hear it.
Yeah, well,
So
that's very true,
comforting.
isn't it?
That's true.
That's
Yeah.
comforting. As long as you can hear it.
As long as you could hear him, he was okay.
It was bad when you heard the other ones,
But
though.
the one that hits you, you'll never hear it.
Yeah.
Right. Well, Earl, as you saw the Statue of Liberty and got back into the United States, where did you go then?
Belvoir. I think that's in Virginia.
Okay. Were you discharged there, or
That's
did
a
you?
Fort Belvoir.
Yeah,
Yeah, I was
he
discharged.
was discharged at Fort Belvoir. Okay.
And
Now, during the time that you were overseas, of course, your wife wasn't with you. Where did you meet up with your wife then, as you got back?
at where did I come in at? I got on an airplane. Where did you meet me?
Alliance at the train station.
Oh, maybe I came the whole way on the train
You must have.
from Virginia.
To Alliance?
Fort Belvoir, Virginia. I must have come into Alliance on the train, and she met me in the old terraplane.
Okay. Still had the old terraplane, huh?
And
Uh-huh.
I I drove it home, didn't I? I
Yeah.
think so. The next morning, I wanted to go someplace, and I got in that car, and I drove it maybe a half a mile, and I got out, and I walked all the way around it. I must have 4 flat tires. I never rode in anything that rode that soft. Well, riding in a Jeep or a
Yeah.
6x6
Yeah.
truck is a big difference. But that truck had all tire, that car had all its tires up. So I got back in it. It must be me.
Okay. As you began to get back into civilian life and so on, where was you living then with your family?
Here.
Did you come right back to
Were you
this
living
house?
here then? She said she was living here.
Mhm.
We
So you-
rented this for a little while
And then I
Why-
come back here. We
during
come
the
back
time.
Yeah.
I
Before
was
you
in-
bought it?
No,
No,
after,
he rented
after
it
we
to
bought it.
people during the war
Oh.
while she was with him.
She lived with her parents.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, she was living here when I built the pickup truck
Yeah.
out of that car. Yeah, she said, we're going back. So
Yeah.
I built that truck bed. Never thought about needing a truck license. I went down there with just the automobile license on it. Never even thought about it. You ought to have a
Did
truck
they stop you?
license. No, never.
Yeah.
Well, Earl, as you got home and got settled back into your house here, what did you do for a living?
I went back to work with my dad. I had
Okay.
worked a period of time at Alliance Machine. They built cranes.
Mm-hmm.
And for some crazy reason, I thought I should be in a business that has to do with the war. Carpenter work I didn't think was that important. So I quit working for my dad and went to the Alliance Machine Company and built cranes. And then of course the law says they have to give you your job back,
Yeah.
but I never went back for a job. My dad wanted me, my brother wanted me. I decided to go with my dad, so I stayed with my dad till he died. And we built houses.
You built houses and
And after he died, I built houses all by myself,
did you?
one brick at a time.
Yeah. that's
I
how
show
they
you
do it.
houses I built all by myself with an 80-year-old man mixing the mud, carrying the brick,
So you were a bricklayer.
one brick at a time.
Not him,
Okay.
but another guy.
You want me to bring coffee in here?
No, we can go out there.
Yeah.
Well, you got your stuff on the snack bar.
Whatever.
I
you
got those
them
little
tray.
tables.
Yeah, bring them in.
I'll bring them
We're
in.
going to shut that
Well,
off.
no, we want to talk a little bit more.
Oh,
I
you do?
need to. We need to talk about your family now. You had 2 children when you went into the service, and as you got back home, you obviously still had 2 children. And where did the other 4 come from?
Same place. But
Over the years, when were they
The-
born? Do you remember a little bit?
The one next is Richard, I believe. He's the next oldest, and then Bonnie.
And then Bonnie. So she
And
was
then-
your 4th child.
And then there's Terry that lives down. She lives about 6 miles from here.
Mm-hmm.
Tom lives about 2 miles as the crow flies, and he's the transportation superintendent at the Salem City
Okay.
Schools. He was assistant fire chief until he took that job, and he told me he just can't be that busy. That job over there keeps him busy.
Yeah. So
He's got about 20 some buses. I think he has to keep on the
Yeah.
road.
you mentioned that you'd spent a lot of time with the fire department. Was that a full-time job, or was that
They're a volunteer.
just a volunteer?
That was 42 years.
As a volunteer.
And I'll give you this to look at. There's an inscription on the back. After 40 years, they gave me that.
They give you a watch after 40 years.
And then show it to him. And then I saw him 2 more years after that. So Then I was 80, and I told them they didn't need me anymore.
You don't think they
I
needed
was
you
still,
after 80
I
years?
was still an EMT, and
Only when I hit it.
Over this way. There you go.
So that's what you got for at 80 years old, huh?
yeah, 40. There's an inscription on the back that says that.
Good.
I don't know if we can get the inscription or
I don't
not.
suppose you can. It's pretty fine.
Yeah, no, we can't get the inscription. So what's the inscription say?
For
It said,
40
congratulations for 40 years of
service. Yeah.
service as a volunteer fireman.
Yeah.
And you took EMT training, and
Yeah.
you
We were one of the first EMT units in the area, and we had our training before they passed a law that made it legal. We were like the turn signals. They had turn signals on automobiles
before it was
before the
before it was required.
decided that it was legal to use them. So you still had to hang your arm out the window to make a turn, even though you had turn signals. That
Yeah,
was
you
the way
did.
it was with
I
us.
remember that.
That's the way it was with us with the training.
Well, been a great life story, Earl, and we will continue on a little bit later and talk about the photographs and the pictures. Earl, it's been a pleasure to talk to you and to visit with you in your home, and we hope this is not the last time that we
Well,
are here.
what you have to remember about all of us people that were in the service, I'll say service because there was a lot of people like the cooks and the truck drivers that this couldn't have happened without everybody doing whatever they were told to do.
That's right.
And it didn't mean just everybody shooting a gun.
No, it didn't. In fact, we've interviewed many truck drivers and many cooks, and fellows that say, "Oh well, my time in the service wasn't very important."
Well, that's
But
that's
every
what you,
piece of it was important.
There's one story that I want you to pick up. You might have to read 100 of them to find it. But this fellow was talking about a German soldier that was injured and needed help. And he says, "Where's your medic?" And he pointed to the dead fellow laying over there on the ground. He says, "There he is over there. Either you or one of your buddies shot him." And that's the kind of stories you get out of that book.
Yeah.
The medics, we had one with us too, and he was born in Germany and he could speak German, and so we had no problem with Germans. He could speak to them fluently. He had both dialects.
Wow.
There's 2 different dialects in German, and he had them both.
And he knew what was going on, didn't he?
And that's something we didn't get on the tape. I was
Yeah.
in charge of a group of prisoners after the war, building a high tension line in a staging area, and I went every morning to get a group of prisoners to help me. And after the first day, you get a lot of the same ones because they liked to work with me. I wasn't hard on them, and they had a chance to get out of the compound, and they had their the bean can that they would fill full of food scraps to take back to their buddies and have a midnight snack or whatever. And we fed them good. Every German prisoner was fed good.
Now, where
Good.
was that at?
This was in southern France after the war.
Oh,
And I went to this is still on camera. I suppose I ought to tell you this story.
Why not?
I'm easy to go. I easy to forget things. But anyway, I went to the compound the very first day, and I told the guard I want about 6 volunteers. And so there was a lot of them volunteered. They wanted to get out of that fence. And so the first thing I said was, "Does anybody here speak German?" And an older fella, probably my age, came up and he says, I speak German. He says, I teach German. I teach English. I'm getting my story mixed up. So I teach English in school, he says, but I teach the British version, which is a lot different than American. He says, my English is British English. He says, over here, this little fella knows your American slang. He said he would make a good interpreter for you. This fella he's referring to is a little 16-year-old kid.
Oh, wow.
And he also told me his story. He says, I was inducted, I guess you'd say, into the German army at the last minute. He says, I had no training. And I had a buddy, and we had one rifle between us. And I got separated, or we got separated from our unit. He says that we hid all day. And then one of us would take the rifle out at night to see if we could find something to eat. And of course we couldn't, because nothing there grows. It's all blowed up ground. So he said we had to surrender because we were starving. And he volunteered every day. He was with me every day that we worked because he liked to get away. And it wasn't real heavy work either. We were putting up high tension lines, putting wire on poles and so on and so forth. And in fact, at noon we let them go. There wasn't going to any place they could go because they couldn't eat if they weren't with some army, some U.S. Army. And I'd let them go out scrounge something to eat because they always had their little can and they'd stand by the garbage can. If you had anything on their plate that they wanted, you just scrape it into their can instead of in the garbage. And we didn't mind doing that at all. It was good use for our wasted food. We wasted a lot of food. Well, he got away from our group because we moved during that time, and he had to find out where we were and run to keep up with. Now, like, he's a prisoner.
Yeah.
He's running to keep up
with the guys that were
with his captor.
Yeah.
And boy, he said, I was scared. He says, I didn't know whether I could find you or not. Well, he could have got back to the compound one way or another, but anyway, that's what he did.
Now, did you become friends with any of those prisoners?
Oh yeah, all of them.
They were just like ordinary people.
People are people all over the world. People get into wars because of the government, not the people.
That's true.
Yeah, people are people everywhere. You'll find bad ones.
And you find a lot of good ones.
Find a lot of good ones. Yeah, and I could teach with him. I could speak to all the people there because he was, like the professor said, he was good at our slang.
Mm-hmm.
This is signifies the Combat Engineers. And this is a pair of chopsticks.
Okay, how about that wooden knife?
This is a letter opener. This is my insignia, Tech Sergeant. These are Italian razor blades. And this is the instant tea, and this is the toilet paper, and this is our can opener, my dog tag. This is a meal of fruit bar.
What did they call that?
Called it a fruit bar.
Okay.
And this is an old-fashioned fountain pen. Came from Germany, as far as I know. And this also was one of those Hitler-Jurgen knives. This is a little piece of film, but I don't know what's in it.
I forgot today's a holiday.
And this is our insignia.
I was wondering why it must be a holiday.
Group insignia, I think it is. This is what they call General Services outfit.
Okay.
And these are Hitler-Jurgen knives, like a Boy Scout.
What did you call them? Jurgen?
Jurgen, I think it is.
Okay, and then they were the boys, the young boys that
Yeah, the young
that was
boys
trained by Hitler.
trained for combat duty.
Earl, would you come over here now? What I would like to do is to have you describe these pictures a little bit of where they were, and if that's an actual picture that you took, or if it's a picture that you got
I got these
from.
from one of my buddies. Yeah.
Okay. So let's talk about it. And
This is survivors.
is that a survivor actually?
I'm pretty sure it is. And they're just moving one of the dead bodies. This is a trench.
Okay, wait a minute. Now that's a trench where they.
Dug with I suppose, a bulldozer. It was filled with bodies.
Oh, for goodness sakes!
Filled with bodies, and in this picture they're starting to remove the bodies. These are bodies down here.
Uh huh.
They had the German prisoners doing that job.
If you want to go.
And these are the barracks that the prisoners stayed in.
Okay, now the third picture there.
And this is they're posing this picture. These are survivors, but they're showing what they did. They put the body in the furnace to burn it up. This is probably a better picture of that.
Okay, now
These are survivors.
let me get down to get that one. Okay.
And most of these are just what they are. They're piles of bodies. And this is one of the buildings, and I don't remember exactly what that particular building was used for, but that's a pile of bodies out in front of it. And that's what these are. This is a truck. It's actually a four-wheel trailer, but it's absolutely full of bodies. This is more of a close-up of some of those piles. And that's all this is too, is a pile of bodies.
Just a close-up of the bodies.
Yeah.
And that was in the concentration camp of where?
Buchenwald.
Buchenwald is how you pronounce it, huh?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you, Earl.
Some of them, most of them we do. The only ones we don't are the ones in Colorado. Mine always comes home for Christmas. You know, last year when
I have.
was in that
That finished up, I wanted to tell you another little story.
I do have this finished up.
It just takes time.
Tell me what you're reading there, Earl, and what it's about.
They're out from underneath.
Well, our bridge was down in here,
Said, lady, he said, you don't know how thankful you
and we were connected with the 9th Armored Division at that time.
see how he controlled
Really not connected with it, but we were in their territory, so
Carol,
But she never screamed or anything. She just kept her
okay.
but I wanted to tell you about the one job that we had, which is not a war job, it's just a job. See this type of a bridge on the Autobahn. This might have been an aqueduct, but I wanted to show you the type of a bridge that they built over the Autobahn. With this type of a masonry arch bridge. The one we took down was 300 feet down, and the span that we took off was 90 foot. A 90-foot span of bridge, 300 feet. And
Wow,
we took that one down, and there were 2 or 3 more, but a different engineer company was taking the rest of them down while we were taking this one. And my brother-in-law helped build that bridge that's in this picture right next to ours. It's within sight. biggest load that the Army ever transported on ground.
And that was
Should have been on a railroad car.
that was used to build part of a bridge.
This is on the Autobahn. It was on the Autobahn. It had to do with the railroad outfit. And that's the outfit he was in. And he got to this bridge, which is a blowed out section of one of these. Well, you know the strength of an arch bridge is in the keystone.
Yes.
And of course the keystone's not there. And you don't know how many bombs it's been near that didn't hit it, could have shut it loose. Anyway, there was a lieutenant guarding that bridge, and he said, that's the first thing I thought about. Why is there a lieutenant guarding that bridge? Well, of course he stopped him and asked him how much weight he had on. And he went in his little shanty, and he come out and he says, I don't know what to tell you. He says, you've got exactly the weight that is the capacity of this bridge. Number for number. And he says, I'll leave it up to you whether you want to go across or not. And the detour was roughly 30 miles. Well, he was young. He was quite a bit younger than I was. My sister was 6 years younger than I was, and he graduated with her. So he thought, what the heck, I might as well go. Well, he says halfway across it was all downhill. And when he got to the middle of that bridge, he says, I was sorry I ever started across. He said it was uphill all the way. And he made it across that bridge. And I don't know, there was evidently somebody on the other end guarding it also. And together, they closed that bridge. They didn't allow anybody else to cross it. And we were evidently the closest engineer outfit, and they told us to come and tear it down.
Really?
And we did that. Now here we are, 300 feet up in the air, and we got 90 foot of bridge that we have to tear down. Now how are you going to do that? What we did, we jacked up one end, put it on wheels. Then we got 96 feet of bridge and built 96 feet of bridge on down the Autobahn. Now we had 180 feet of bridge on, and had wheels in the middle of it. And we drug that back down off of that. And got away with it.
Wow.
Then I said we only did one. I think we did two of them. But that was kind of exciting work.
I bet it was. Oh, Earl, did you make the man too?